Good day, family. Ron Holland here, host of Community Voices on Old School 105.3 and Praise 100.9. Today's program is brought to you by JT's Kia of Rock Hill, 840 North Anderson Road. Family, I want to introduce you to Mecklenburg County's new district attorney. He is Spencer Merriweather, and he is here with me today to talk about some of the things that he's doing in our community. Being a new district attorney obviously has some real responsibility, so I wanted to introduce you to him and give him an opportunity to talk to you. Mr. Merriweather, thank you so much for joining me today.
Ron, thank you for having me and giving me an opportunity to share about some of the things we're doing in the office.
Absolutely. First of all, I want you to disabuse me of the notion that what you do is what is being done on television.
I promise
the CSI and the...
I promise you, it's got not a lot to do with what happens on television.
No.
First of all, I wish I was as good to be able to resolve conflict within 30 minutes or an hour. But instead, obviously, my cases are a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah.
So
now you have a unique vantage point in terms of being able to see crimes unfold, as well as console, counsel victims of crimes. Talk a little bit about the day-to-day that happens in the district attorney's office.
The day-to-day first starts with figuring out whether a crime actually happened.
Yeah.
We review the evidence that's presented to us by law enforcement. From there, we decide whether or not we can take that evidence and prove it to a jury of 12 beyond a reasonable doubt. That is the standard that every prosecutor has to meet. Part of preparing for that trial process is, as you say, consulting and meeting with folks who have been the victims of crime, the witnesses that witnessed that crime. And so it's an extremely people-oriented business and process, and we have to make sure that we're doing all that we can to do right by people.
Yeah. What is it like having to console someone who perhaps lost a family member to a particularly tragic crime? Walk us through that process.
Every time you enter a room with someone who has lost a loved one or someone who they themselves have been a victim of crime, you recognize, even though you're trying to help, that you have now instantly become a part of someone's tragedy. And that's a very harrowing thing to realize when you walk into a room like that. That said, very much like a doctor would walk into a hospital room or walk into an operation room, you realize when you walk in, it's your responsibility to make this better, if you can. Now, you're not going to make it every outcome. I mean, you're not going to be able to make every circumstance better. But you're going to do all you can, put all your skill, all your knowledge, all your effort to working on behalf of those people. Now,
obviously, there are some emotional turmoil that folks have to deal with. Do you ever take some of that stuff home with you?
Certainly, and you know, self-care is important in any job that we have. It's important for parents, it's important for whatever sort of job you have, and it's certainly important for prosecutors. And you have to make sure that if you're taking care of yourself, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, I certainly can't help anybody else. And so keeping that in mind, because people do count on us to be professionals and be there for them and argue cases for them. That's our responsibility.
Now, we've had some high-profile cases in the last few years. Talk a little bit about how you've had to grapple with those particular cases, particularly around our community's interaction with police. As DA, how do you cope with those kind of things?
I think my grandparents used to say, keep your eyes on the plow. I think my parents used to say, keep your eyes on the prize. And for a prosecutor, the responsibility is to keep your eyes on the law. Making sure that that law is applied equitably and justly for everyone and consistently. But ultimately, the law should be your guide. That's not going to make everybody happy all the time. It's not going to be pleased, but people ought to be able to expect the truth from their prosecutor, and I hope to give that to them.
Now, obviously, there is a perception in our community, particularly, that those negative interactions with police don't always lead to an equitable situation, particularly when you talk about race. Talk a little bit about how you deal with the issue of race in policing in our community.
Every single aspect of our government, every single aspect of institution in our community has been affected by racism, a history of racism in this country. And so it took 400 years to get to this point. And so we have to do the long work in order to rebuild and strip some of that away. I think that people who work in the DA's office, people who work in police departments, people who work in all elements of our criminal justice system have a responsibility to put the work in to tear some of that down. And we're beginning to do that. And that means calling things what they are, making sure that we all respect that we do walk into rooms with implicit biases. And now the next question you have to ask is, what are we doing to tear some of those biases down?
Are some of the decisions that you make, are you moved at all by city politics? For instance, does the city council have any sway in the kind of decisions you have to make with regard to law?
Absolutely not. Again, keeping your eyes on the prize, keeping your eyes on the law is what should guide the decision of a prosecutor. The moment you let politics and the moment you let public opinion sway what occurs and how you apply the law with someone, you've instantly done wrong by that person. You instantly denied that person their constitutional rights. Politics cannot enter into a decision.
What about when there is a really high-profile case and there are members of the community in the streets? They're protesting, they're demonstrating. Are you swayed at all? Are you moved at all by those kinds of protests? Because ultimately they're trying to send a message to your office that we want justice. What are your views on that?
I'd be crazy to say that I'm not moved. Of course I'm moved. The question is, what is the appropriate valve? What is the appropriate lever for people to be pulling? If people feel as if an application of the law, is it the application of the law that's unjust, or is it the law itself that's unjust? If people feel like it's the law itself that's unjust, there's a place for that, and that place is the legislature, that place is the city council, that place is the county commission. But if people feel like what I'm charged with doing is the application of the law, and I feel like I have to be able to do that as justly as possible.
Is there a role for the DA to sort of tamp down the negative interactions our community is having with the police?
The role for the DA is to make sure that the DA is explaining himself, explaining the process to people as much as possible, because and this is not when cases are hot, not when cases are pending, but before they're pending, before they're hot. That's when it's our duty to respond and explain, because the truth is the law and, quite honestly, ethics require that the moment there is a pending case, I can't begin to entertain public opinion. I can't begin to entertain politics. I can't say a word about a case once a case is pending.
Do you think there is parity, given all that we've seen with regard to police interactions with our community? Is there parity in our criminal justice system?
I think what we have, things like parity, things like justice, these aren't things that we have. These are things that we are searching for. These are things that we are constantly fighting for, constantly reaching for. And so we haven't reached it yet, to be sure, but we're constantly reaching for it. And that's going to be the response of every single partner in the criminal justice system to do that.
Now, I've had the pleasure and opportunity of reading your long, extensive resume. I mean, gosh, you are involved in so many different things. Talk a little bit about what you hope to bring to this office and what you hope to bring to Mecklenburg County.
I bring a lot of experience to this office, a lot of different perspective. When you've had an opportunity to look into the eyes of people who've lost a loved one, when you've been able to sit down across from someone who has been sexually assaulted, when you recognize the impact of family violence in our community, those are all experiences that I take into court with me, into this office with me. When you sit with someone who has fought hard to fight their addiction to control substances, and you recognize this isn't someone who's a criminal, this is someone who's actually sick. And so if I take those sorts of sensitivities into my job, I'll be doing all right.
Now, you have a number of initiatives that you are bringing to Mecklenburg County. Talk a little bit about those.
Well, the first one, and I think that's critically important, is the formation of a family justice center in Charlotte. What that does in Mecklenburg County, what that does is that focuses all of the services that a victim of child abuse, a victim of domestic violence may need, a victim of sexual assault may need, puts that under the same roof with partners from the law enforcement community as well as the criminal justice community. Because we realize that a victim or survivor of these crimes has to make too many stops, fill out too many forms, go to too many places in order to be served. So if we can have them served in one place, we empower that survivor of these crimes. We empower these families. They're doing this in Asheville, they're doing it in Greensboro. There's no reason why why they can't do that in Mecklenburg County.
Right, right. And you also work with ex-offenders.
That's exactly right. We are trying to make sure that we instill the value in our community that once a person has served their time after being held accountable, that they have every right, and we need them to be able to be in a position to make contributions to the community in which they come from.
Now, diversity is certainly important to you. Talk a little bit about some of the hires that you are hoping to accomplish.
Again, I have been a longtime champion of diversifying the workforce in the District Attorney's Office, making sure that we're an inclusive environment, because I think that instills trust. Already, in the 2 months that I've been in office, we've had the opportunity to hire 2 African-American line prosecutors to our office. And I think that we're going to look for more opportunities to make sure that we have a workforce that represents Mecklenburg County.
Now, as we close out, I want our audience to know that there was some moments in your life where you contemplated your career track. Talk a little bit about those moments. Was there a serendipitous moment in your life where you really thought about, this is something that I actually had to pursue?
I was an intern in the DA's office a long ways back before I ultimately got a job. And I interned with our homicide prosecution team. And when you sat across from not just a father, but an African-American father who had lost his child, seeing his face and seeing what he was going through, and knowing that I had a perspective to offer him that may have given him some comfort, that was the day that I knew that this could be the job for me. That was the way that I could make an impact. Wow.
Well, District Attorney Spencer Merriweather, thank you so much for coming in. Talk a little bit about some of the things that you're doing. Is there any other thing, any other initiative that our community should be aware of?
Ron, I just want the community to know that I'm looking for ways to engage with them in any way that's possible. I want people to understand that the DA's office is an office that works for them, which means that I have to open my arms, and I hope they'll open theirs, to make sure that there's a link between the DA's office, the criminal justice system, and the community at large.
And if someone is interested in reaching out to you, how can they reach you?
They can call me, they can email me. It's in the book, I promise. I have the longest email address in the state of North Carolina, so I'm not going to read it out for you. But they can call me at 704-686-0700.
All right, Mr. DA, thank you so much for coming
Ron,
in.
thank you so much.
Absolutely. For more information about our new district attorney, you can log on to our website, oldschool1053.com and praise100.9.com. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.